if anyone would like to ask Howard a question, more than happy to, or any of the others. I've got a couple of minutes now. Yep.
Yeah, g'day fellas, my name's Ian. I'm not 100% sure on what the FTA's impact's going to have on the price, what the Chinese will pay for our product. But you know, what are they saying about this on their side of the fence? And with that, you know, are there any foreseeable sort of impacts that could have on agriculture that we probably should be concerned about?
Who wants to answer that?
I'd say, I mean, in terms of the feedback from the Chinese, I mean, we at Dairy Australia, we've run seminar programs and scholarship programs with the Chinese for 15 years. So the alumni that's come out of that, we got a lot of feedback going, oh my gosh, you know, you're going to overrun our domestic industry. And so that kicks us into the whole explanation about, well, here's the map of Australia and there's the desert, and there's the production elements, and this is our total production, and you're importing more than, yeah. So there's been a bit of the miscommunication, or the misperceptions about the scale and size and capacity, that Gary talked about earlier on about at the realistic capacity for us to flood some of these markets. So that's from that side. On the other side, from the customer side, as I said, we've seen the raft of investment, and they're seeing it in a positive light. I mean, the reality is that the tariffs are paid by the importers, not the exporters. So from those importers' perspective, they're going, this is a direct benefit to us. We hope that flows through a bit of the supply chain, that we get some of the value back. I don't know, in terms of long-term risks or issues, probably the one risk that I would say is probably one of the things that the New Zealand dairy industry has fallen into, is that they've been a bit too, probably a bit too focused on the Chinese market as a result of their FTA. They have 98% of the whole milk powder market in China now. But you know, the Chinese, as this year, have really pulled back from the global marketplace, and the New Zealanders are feeling quite exposed from that. So it's still important to make sure that that diversity of risk, which after a big result like the China FTA, it can be tempting to load up too much in that context.
Probably just add a little bit more. I think Charlie's points about concerns about China being flooded with imports from Australia was always part of the dynamic, I guess, in the negotiating process as well. And so there was part of an education process in ensuring they understood the capacities of Australia's exports and what we were trying to achieve. And we're certainly looking in terms of the premium product into the market, and that's going to attract more premium pricing as a result, and that's the sort of the focus that we're putting in, because I think the thing is, you've got to look at what the market, the size of the market is phenomenal. Everybody wants to supply the market, but we also have to be realistic about what our capacity is in terms of supplying that market. So our entire, as an example, our entire pig pork production is one day's consumption in China. So that sort of puts it into perspective of what we can actually do. So, but then if you want to enter the market, you've got to find that niche, that difference, and go for that premium product. So I think that's where your price advantage is in that market. So, and I think that's something that just came through from Howard's comments as well, which is, I think he's tapping into exactly that. So.
This is directed at the panel, but probably more so to you, Howard. You mentioned at the start of your presentation you do some work with Woolies. Food production to the supermarket giants is becoming more and more homogenised. One size fits all, and then on the other hand we're hearing that there are niches in Asia that we need to capitalise on that's far from homogenised, because we can't compete with costs and things like that. Do you feel that perhaps your business is going in two different directions, and is that the case with other horticultural people you know, and how do you balance that?
Oh, look, without doubt, the domestic market's going to continue to be a pretty important part of our business. In the last couple of years, trading at 105 cent dollar, probably reiterated to us how important it is that we keep our focus on the domestic market and keep growing it. I suppose we are, as I said, our labour cost is twice the cost of New Zealand, and it's 10 times the cost of Chile, South Africa and Argentina. So we don't want to leave this domestic market undersupplied so that we're forcing Woolworths and Coles into bringing in imported fruit. So, we're not going to change our focus. They've been, massive, massive supporters of us. So I first held a press conference in 1997, basically with my college research project in hand, and with the support of Woolworths, we said we're going to replace the import of New Zealand cherries into the Australian market. So we started off as an import replacement program, but as our volume's grown and expanded, we've then been able to focus on export. So it really does tend to be two different products almost. So there is a limit to what most Australians will pay, and so we tend to find that limit is about $12 to $14 a kilo is about all most Australians will pay. So normally that'll be either a 26mm or a 28mm cherry. But that's exactly what the Chileans are selling in the rest of the world, and the Chileans are probably getting $5 a kilo for them. So we're happy to grow our business in Australia with those. And then the bigger part of our production, the 30mm, the 32, the 34, that the Chileans don't tend to have, that's the stuff that we can put in a really small package, in a really fancy package, and position at the top of the market and try and extract a premium for it. So, but I don't think we can have one without the other, because the domestic business, it's our bread and butter business. We're working hard to promote cherries during our season, to sell as many as we can in Australia. We don't have the big freight costs, and we're appreciative of, you might have seen a sign in Woolworths recently, and it's like 96% of what's sold through our stores is Australian sourced produce, and so they're really loyal to Australian producers. And we've now got imported apples coming into Australia, so there's apples from China, apples from New Zealand. Both Coles and Woolworths have publicly stated they will not put on their shelves apples from New Zealand. So what a vote of confidence that is for Australian farmers, that the two biggest customers in this country are prepared to back us and keep us in business against a stiff competitor.
I've got two more questions which I'll take, and then we'll break for lunch, so I'll have yours first.
My question is directed at Howard. Thank you for your very interesting talk. But my name is Jenny. I'm interested to know where you source the vast amount of labour I imagine you need for picking your crops.
It's an interesting question, but when the wage rates that we have to pay are so far out of kilter with the rest of the world, I'm not exaggerating when I'd say that between now and the end of January, we'll have 15,000 people approach us for work. Everyone in the world wants to come here because there's nowhere in the world you can earn as much money as you earn in Australia for relatively unskilled labour. So you might have recently, they were referring to as the backpacker tax. That backpackers are now not going to have the threshold. They've got to start paying tax at the same rate we all have to, right from the first dollar they earn. And there was some debate about whether that might stop backpackers from coming. And one of our Taiwanese guy, he said, "Oh, it won't worry me. We are still, if we are in Taiwan, we are not even earning $5 Australian an hour. We come here, we earn $22 an hour, lose a bit of tax, we're still way in front." So that's it. We are absolutely inundated with people on working holiday visas from Asia, from Europe, all of Europe. Like there is just no money there. The economies are so bad. The number of young Europeans from all the, I'm not talking Eastern Europe, I'm talking Western Europe, and the other one is French Canadians. French Canadians, there'll be 5,000 of them wanting work because there's a sizable cherry industry in Canada. A good skilled picker can earn good money, and we're almost Canada's Southern Hemisphere equivalent. So they all know, and they all want to, their first choice if they come to Australia, they want to come work for us because all our trees are picked from the ground. You don't need a ladder, so you're so much more productive. The picking's all on piecework. You get paid price per kilo. We hope we try and grow the biggest cherries in the world, so you don't have to pick so many of them to fill your lug up. So there are French Canadians that will be earning $400 a day, and so they will honestly, if they could be guaranteed even 3 weeks' work, they'll buy a ticket and fly to Australia just for that 3 weeks.
And do you have to house them?
So yes, we do. It's not something we've sort of necessarily wanted to do in the Huon Valley. We don't actually have anyone live on the farms in the Huon Valley now because, they all tend to drink and carry on, and it's that sort of lifestyle, I suppose. So in the Huon, we've got other options. There's backpackers, there's caravan parks. There are other places for them to stay. But in the Derwent Valley, where we're further away from a town, we recently had to build accommodation there so we can sleep about 90 people on the farm now. They've got all the cooking facilities, amenities, etc., and really, it's just a guarantee that guarantee they're there. When they're all on site, if they don't turn up, you can go and build on their door and drag them out of bed. But sourcing labour it's the least of our concern.
How many Australians in the queue?
Look, there's still a few, and our preference always is to have what we refer to as professional pickers. So, you never, with us having so many people after work, we're never going to employ someone that hasn't picked cherries before. And most of the time, we can employ people, obviously 90% of the people are returning to us year after year. So those new positions are someone that one of those 90% introduces us to, or they're professional pickers. So there's a lot of Australian-based people that will start picking cherries in New South Wales. They'll move down to Victoria, then they'll move down to us. So they probably have 3 months of picking cherries. Often they'll probably stay with us. The best guys will keep them to pick apples, and then they'll go back probably to Queensland and pick citrus and start coming down again. So those Australian travelling pickers are gold. They're the best people we can get. In the packing shed, we don't tend to, all the middle management are all Australians, and some of the supervisors. We find, we get a lot of young Australians, like kids from the local area applying for their first job often, and honestly, they don't have the attention span. And we find, and it almost sounds like a racist comment, but the attention to detail that Asians have for the packing shed, they're the only people we can get to do the job properly. And they appreciate the quality, and they just do an outstanding job. So, so those, the young Australians, they get a job, folding boxes or palletising fruit, something that doesn't quite acquire the attention span of consistently looking at cherries day in, day out.
Okay, thank you for that, Howard. Very detailed on the labour side, but we'll continue that conversation outside later if anyone's got more questions. Look, one more question, unless anyone would like to chat with them outside, but just a quick one, thanks.
Well, very in Blair, Howard, a quick question for those special varieties. Are you able to get licensed to propagate them in your nursery? And if you are, how do they keep track of how many you make?
Good question. So, so with the apples, we're not a significant enough apple player that we've felt like we've had the ability to take on a variety ourselves. So with the apples that I mentioned, most of those we're growing as with the Montague family here in Victoria from Narre Warren, we're growing them under a sub-licence to them. In the case of cherries, we actually we manage the trademarks in Australia. So I said before we've got a relationship with an equivalent of British Columbia in Canada. They've had for 25 years a fantastic breeding program where they're focusing on breeding large, hard, late season cherries. So the last 3 varieties that have come out of there, Staccato, Centennial and Sovereign, Hanson Orchards have the Australian rights to those varieties, so we manage who grows them, and obviously we grow most of them ourselves, but we do license other people to grow them for us. So there's 2 separate things. There's a trademark to protect the variety name. So it's like Coca-Cola's a trademark. So in the case of Jazz, it's a Jazz Apple trademark. But the variety is coming off a Cy-Fresh tree. So there's non-propagation agreements that prevent anyone from just growing that tree. So we've always grown our own nursery trees, but recently we bought a licence of the Australian Nurseryman's Fruit Improvement Company, and so ANFIC has the Australian rights to propagate most of the apple and cherry varieties that come into this country. So, you know, we haven't had anything we've wanted to propagate, we haven't been able to up until this point, but we've bought that licence so that as we go forward we make sure we can still propagate everything we need to ourselves.
Right, thank you. Now look, that brings us to the conclusion of our forum.